Welcome everybody to part 2 of easily confused words. Today we're going to be looking at place, room and space. What are the differences between the words place, room and space? What do they mean and when can we use each one? A room is a part of a building that has its own walls. For example, we stayed in the room at the end of the hall, or she slept all night in my room. Also, room is an area that can be used for a purpose, where something can be put. For example, there isn't enough room for your luggage in the trunk. So room is like space, enough area. They found a bag with more room in it. Place is a particular area or position, or room or building. For example, let's get out of this place. The service is terrible. Do you want to come back to my place? It is also a natural or proper position for something. The position where something belongs. For example, when you are finished with the books, please put each one back in its place where it belongs. Or everything has its own place. Also, place is a seat, especially one that can be reserved. A seat that is reserved for a person. For example, I'm sorry, but you're sitting in my place. Or, that is my brother's place. It is a seat that is reserved for a person. Place is also used to talk about concrete areas. For example, if you can give someone directions to it, then it is a place. For example, you know the place I'm talking about, don't you? It's by the river, between the cafe and the park. Space is an area between 2 points that is not filled. For example, always put a space between words when you type, or leave a space between the 2 cars. It is also an area or place that is not occupied and is available for use. For example, the space for your signature is at the bottom. Or, there is still some space in my bag. Or, there is still a space in the parking lot. There is still a space in the parking lot. Room and space can be uncountable. When they are used in this way, they are very general words for talking about undefined areas. For example, your car takes up too much space, too much room in the garage. We don't know how much, but we know that it's a lot. There should be enough space on this disk to save the whole file. Space and place can also be countable. For example, when they are used in this way, they talk about specific areas or places, usually for putting things or something or sitting. For example, how many parking spaces were free this morning? How many? Countable. Is this place free? I would like to sit down. Now we're going to look at some more commonly misspelled words. You can practice typing some other difficult words with both English students One double consonant words. Acclaim. It means to praise enthusiastically and often publicly. Applaud. You can also look at the synonym praise. To acknowledge or to declare with enthusiastic approval. For example, she was an acclaimed person of the year. She was acclaimed person of the year. I acclaim certain people who have done amazing things. Accomplish. This means to succeed in doing, to bring to pass. You can also look at the synonym perform, or to reach the end of or complete something. For example, sometimes she felt like she could never accomplish anything, or the work was finally accomplished. Accumulate. It means to gather or collect, often in a slow, gradual way. For example, I try to accumulate wealth, or how can I accumulate experience in my domain? Exaggerate is to represent something bigger than it really is in real life, or overstate. For example, to exaggerate the size of the enemy force, or exaggerated his own role in the episode. It also means to enlarge or increase an abnormal degree, to an abnormal degree. For example, thick lenses that exaggerated the size of her eyes. They made her eyes look bigger than they were. Two double consonant words. For example, accessible, easy to approach, reach, or enter, or speak, or use. For example, they had accessible evidence that they could use easily. Or he is accessible to bribery. It is easy to get him for bribery. Committee is a group of people chosen or appointed to perform a specified service or function. For example, it would be managed by steering the committee of city council, county council, and representatives of local groups, or both parties are guided by relevant advisory committees where necessary. Unnecessary is not necessary, needless. For example, this is brutal, nasty, and wholly, completely unnecessary provision. It's kind of entirely unnecessary kind of garbage. It's just a kind of entirely unnecessary type of garbage. Succession is the act or instance of one person or thing following another. For example, in quick succession come two teachers saying, "Well, you thought wrong, didn't you?" None of this bewildering succession of health service reforms has changed the fundamental governance. 3 double consonants. Stubbornness. It means unreasonably, often perversely underlying or bullheaded. For example, a small minority remain stubborn in their belief that without the Beatles, the musical landscape would be a very different place. Or, he was as stubborn as the mules he drove through the fields. Now we're going to look at some generally difficult words. For example, acquaintance. It is the knowledge of a person acquired by a relationship less intimate than a friendship. Just someone you know, for example, at work, etc. We struck up an acquaintance with our new neighbors. We just started to we met them. We don't know them very well, but just a little bit. He has a passing acquaintance with Chinese history. He knows a little bit about Chinese history. Acquire is to gain possession of. For example, I need to acquire 100 shares of stock. It also means to get by your own efforts. For example, I can acquire proficiency in maths. Also, it means to gain through experience. For example, he had acquired a growing dislike of television sitcoms. Acquitted. In law, it means to free or clear from charge or accusation. For example, she acquitted herself well during the interview. It also means to cancel repayments. For example, he was acquitted by the bank. Exceed is a verb. It means to extend beyond or outside of, to go further. The river exceeded its banks. A horror of the spirit that cannot be exceeded at the hour of birth or death. Exceeded my allowance. I exceeded my allowance. I went over my allowance. Hemorrhage is when a lot of blood comes out of the blood vessels. For example, and it also means a copious loss of something valuable. When you lose a lot of something. For example, a hemorrhage of corporate earnings. They lost a lot of money. After hitting his head against the ground, it started to hemorrhage. It started to bleed a lot. Lieutenant is a military officer holding commissioned rank, immediately junior to a captain. For example, in 1653, Knight was appointed a deputy lieutenant for the West Riding. Or, William the Conqueror instructed his royal lieutenant, William de Warenne, to build a castle in the Lewis area. Quarantine is a military officer holding commissioned rank. Quarantine, is when you keep something apart. For example, the policy of compulsory quarantine ended 10 years ago. Or you should quarantine, take apart the emails with known viruses. Analysis is the separation of an intellectual or material whole into its constituent parts for individual study. It is to study each part of something. For example, Dr. Stone returned to the UK in January 2001 to begin data analysis, analyzing the data. Analysis is conducted, happens here at King's. Analysis conducted here at King's is related to the spectral theory of linear operators. And we're now going to look at the unbreakable group of words. Though is a conjunction. It means despite the fact that, although, for example, he still argues though he knows he's wrong. Even though it was raining, he walked to work. Though they may not succeed, they will still try. The adverb though means however, nevertheless. Snow is not predicted. We can expect some rain, though. Wouldn't that be all, though? Tough is an adjective. It means able to withstand a great strain without tearing or breaking, strong and resilient. A tough all-weather fabric, or tough meat, or tough mountaineers, a tough cop, a tough winter, strong. Trough is a long, narrow, generally shallow receptacle for holding water or feed for animals. It is a place that you put water or food for animals. For example, the animals eat out of the trough. Thorough is an adjective. It means exhaustively, complete. For example, a thorough search, or thorough research, or a thorough pleasure. Absolute, complete. Through is a preposition. It means in one side and out the opposite of another side. For example, we went through the tunnel, or a walk through the flowers, or climbed in through the window, going in one side and coming out of the other. Thought is the past tense and participle of think. It is the act or process of thinking. For example, ancient Greeks thought destruction. Ancient Greeks thought, or destructionists thought, or we didn't give much thought to what she said, or there was no thought of coming home early. She had no thought that anything was wrong. Thank you for watching this video. I hope you've enjoyed, and I will see you next time.